I can't film an apology the week after and share it with them because now they're going to think, oh, he's just doing this in retaliation. He's not actually sorry. At the same time, I didn't want to wait too long either because then it just seems like I'm kicking a dead horse at that point. But that could be the case either way, but nonetheless, they all deserve an apology. More specifically, my ex-YouTuber friend. And it took me 6 months to finally muscle the courage and strength to sit in front of the same camera that I'm sitting in front of right now to make that apology video. That was in October of 2022 when I filmed it. I made it a very in-depth apology video too. My favorite part of that video is I had a whole section in there where I name-checked like all my Twitter friends, why I appreciated them, why I found them all to be unique and cool individuals. I wanted to show that I was not doing this on the spur of the moment. I spent the last 6 months really thinking about what I wanted to say, and that I not only wanted to give these people the apology of my life, but I wanted to do it right. And I spent the next 4 months trying to cut it down, and it ended up being a long video. It was like an hour and 20-minute video, which I mean, it didn't need to be that long when I look back at it now. Because at the same time, I was also using the video as an excuse to let it all out in terms of my work stress and everything, bringing everybody up to date in terms of what I've been doing since I've been out of the community, which I really didn't need to do. I should have just focused on my mental health and just the situation at hand and had that be the bulk of the video, and I probably could have cut out at least a good 20, 30, maybe even 40 minutes. I do think that the finished video represents where I was emotionally, mentally with those situations up to that point. I won't second guess myself from that angle, but I finished it around February. Now, how I was going to present this to everybody was going to be challenging because, again, they all mass blocked me and I wasn't about to create new social media accounts just to deliver this video. So I decided to be a little selective in terms of who I was going to send it to because I still had a few handful of people that I could send it to on some sites. But even after I finished it, I uploaded it. It was an unlisted video and it took me like a day or so just to muscle enough courage to send it to one person. It took me maybe 2 or 3 more days to muscle enough courage to send it to the second person. It took me probably another week to muscle the courage to send it to the third person. Now, the fourth and last person I sent it to was my ex-YouTuber friend. Why were they the last person I sent it to? Well, even when I was filming the video, I didn't have the intention of sending it to them. Not because I wasn't sorry, but because I just thought to myself, I've done enough emotional damage to that person. Bad enough I did that video. I mean, that video was the icing on the cake, but everything that I did up to that point, that just ruined our friendship and ruined their trust in me. Case in point, the last year that I was in that community, my ex-YouTuber friend had actually started going to therapy sessions. The last time that her and I talked, she actually brought it to my attention that she had actually discussed some of the things I did with her therapist. That's a pill that even to this day I'm still trying to swallow. I never in a billion years thought I would be the focus of anyone's therapy sessions. I don't know if I will ever fully get over that. So when I filmed my apology video, I just thought I'll send it to a few other people. If it somehow gets to her through them, whatever. But as the months went on, I began to realize, yes, I did have valid reasons for not wanting to send it to my ex-YouTuber friend, even though the bulk of the apology video was about them. But at the same time, I was also kind of missing the point in terms of why I did the video in the first place. It wasn't to fix anything. I had long accepted at that point there was nothing I was going to say or do at that point that was going to fix anything. So why did you make the apology video? To apologize for what I did, to acknowledge what I did, and I had the worst mental breakdown of my life and you became a victim of it. The best I can do at this point is say I'm sorry. It goes back to what I said a little while ago. Saying you're sorry is not about the pursuit of forgiveness. It's acknowledging things we did wrong. And as time went on, I kept thinking to myself, even if they don't care if I apologize, even if they don't want an apology from me, they at least deserve an apology. I at least owe that to her. So finally, around August of 2023, I finally muscled the courage to send that apology video to them. I didn't get a response and I wasn't expecting to. Since then, I have not reached out to that person. Not because I don't have the physical means to do so. No, if I was really that desperate and that mentally unhinged as I was a few years ago, I would keep messaging them, but I haven't. I'm making a promise to myself that I'm never going to message that person anymore. My friends' well-being and their own mental health is more important to me at this point than renewing the friendship. And if there's anybody out there who just think I'm just longing for this hope that we're all going to be friends again one day, I couldn't ask you guys to be my friends again even if you were willing to be my friends again. More specifically, my ex-YouTuber friend. I couldn't ask her to be my friend again even if by some unlikely chance she was willing to be my friend again. And it's both for reasons that are within my control and not within my control. But I think the biggest reason is because I know there are other people in that community who still will never forget that video I posted back in 2022, just having the worst mental breakdown of my life. And that's the image that, regardless of what I say, regardless of what healing I do, that's the image of me that they're going to stick with. I don't need them to look at her and be like, how the fuck can you be friends with him again after what he did? Unfortunately, there are just people in this world who just don't want to see you change. You do something horrible and that's the image you have to walk off with. And I'm not saying there isn't people in the world who deserve that kind of response. Listen, there are shitty people in the world. But at the same time, there are people who've done shitty things and they've taken upon themselves to try to become a better person. Why do I want to become a better person? Because the person I was a few years ago, he wasn't going to survive. If you really break this down, this is a survival story. The person I was a few years ago, he was either going to get himself into even more more trouble, or he was just going to self-destruct and Lord knows what was going to happen at that point. I want to survive. I want to know what the next phase of my life is. The world's not a perfect place, but I'm still here. Every day I wake up is just a reminder that my story's not over yet. But nonetheless, I still have days where that particular day a few years ago has not left me. I have days where either I don't think about it as much or I still think about it a lot. But nonetheless, I have yet to have a day in the past 3.5 years where I have not thought about what I did to some degree. And before anybody wants to say that's an obsession, I think the fact that I haven't really fully let it go is partly what has helped keep me grounded in terms of my mental health in the last few years. Alcoholics have their moment of clarity. I'm not an alcoholic, but when I did that video a few years ago, that's as close to a moment of clarity as I'm ever going to get. But no, I still have days where I think that day is going to come back to haunt me in the worst possible way. Maybe that's today. Maybe the day that this video goes up, that's the day that that is going to come back to bite me in the ass in the worst possible way. But there's a good side to that as well, because if I have people who watch this video and learn what I did and they turn their backs on me, at least at this point I can sort of say it's on my own terms. This is my story. I feel it's my entitlement to tell the story. I'm not going to bullshit my story. I created this situation for myself, so I'm going to tell it as it is. It was a horrible, life-changing moment in my life, but I'm just grateful that at least it's given me the perspective and clarity that I needed to achieve to bring myself to a mentally better place than I was at the time. I don't want someone who doesn't like me to take my story and just run off with it and try to turn people away from me just because they don't like me. I'm fine if you don't like me. I never asked anybody to like me. Not liking me doesn't entitle you to tell my story. Same with people who want to look at me and say, dude, just grow up, just let it go. Listen, I don't tell you how to deal with your mental situations, don't tell me how to deal with mine. And I still think about my ex-YouTuber friend on a regular basis, not because of those lingering feelings I had a few years ago, but because of what I did to them. I mean, if they were already talking about the things that I had done up to that point with their therapist, I can only imagine what they were talking about after I posted that video. And those are thoughts that just stick with me on a regular basis, and it's hard. I don't like talking about this. I really haven't had too many coping mechanisms in terms of dealing with this situation. I don't really talk about it with my family. I don't really talk about any of my serious situations with my family, not because they don't care or they don't love me and they just don't want to listen to what I have to talk about. No, I have a very supportive family. I'm grateful for my family, but at the same time, in terms of that situation, they're just going to be like, oh, well, you were sticking up for yourself. Don't feel sorry for that. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and just straight up harassing somebody. And whether I like to admit it or not, what I did in that video was straight up harassment. So part of the reason why I don't really talk about this with my family is, again, I appreciate that they only want to look at the good in me. And I mean, listen, I know I'm a good person. And I know I have people in my life who will definitely verify that at the heart of it all, he has his moments, but he is at heart a good person. For my Twitter friends, they only had a few short years to really get to know me. And sadly, that just happened to coincide with a very mentally challenging period of my life. If I really want to cope with the situation in an honest way, I can't just have people saying, oh, well, you're a good person. You didn't do anything wrong. You don't post an hour-long video harassing a woman, calling her a liar, making her the victim of the situations you created for yourself. People will turn their back on you like that. And I saw it happen to me. I got what I had coming to me. I mean, one thing I've had to do several times in the last few years is the shoe on the other foot scenario. What would I have done if I was in their shoes? I would have cut me off too. I wouldn't want to have been friends with somebody like me. I don't want to be friends with people who want to harass people for the situations they created for themselves. No, that doesn't mean I don't wish the best for you. You could be the world's biggest scumbag for all I care, but I'll still wish the best for you. At the same time, through my journey of healing, there's other things I've had to tell myself as well. Yes, I was in the wrong for what I did, but at the same time, I know that some of my Twitter friends posted stuff about me at the time in regards to what I did. How do I know that, even though they cut me off? Because I was able to find the posts at the time by not being logged into my account. Granted, this was right after they cut me off. If I wanted to find those posts now, I would have to make a new account, but I'm not going to do that. I'm at the point now with my healing that I'm not digging up dirt on myself. You want to come up to my face and say bullshit to me? Fine. But if it's just stuff that you're just going to gossip and talk about amongst yourselves, then guess what? I don't want to be around you. With all due respect. Again, I'm not defending what I did. This is not about me trying to paint myself as the good guy. No, I was the bad guy. And in their defense, there's things that I could criticize them for that I've done myself. So again, this is lessons that applies to everybody. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say hey, you guys talking about me behind my back amongst yourselves. That's not exactly making you better people, regardless if you think I was in the wrong or not. I still miss those people nonetheless. I miss my time in that community. I know I'll never be welcome back there. I know I will never see these people again, because even if I see them again, I don't want to be the guy where it's oh God, it's him. No, I'm not going to be him. I'm not going to be your gossip subject. But in their defense, you think I haven't been in situations where I've had to cut people off? Just a few months ago, I mass blocked somebody I knew from my high school days. It was somebody who I've had an on-off friendship with over the years, and her and I have never had good communication. And I'm the kind of guy where, the most I ask of people is just be direct and have good communication. I'm not saying you have to drop everything you do to talk to me or whatever. Especially these days, listen, if I message you and it takes you 2-3 days to get back to me, I'm fine with that. As opposed to a few years ago where I want you to get back to me now. But with this one ex-friend I had from high school, we have never had good communication. And technically, they've taken advantage of me. 10 years ago, they were going to college and they needed these school books books, which I had, but they didn't have the money for the books at the time, but they promised me that if I let them borrow the books, that they would give them back to me at the end of the term. That was almost 10 years ago, and I never got my books back. And keep in mind, these were expensive school books at the time. And I was bitter about that for a while, to the point that I stopped talking to them for a few years. But skip like 2 years ago, I mean, keep in mind, I'm knee deep in my mental healing and everything. I thought, let me reconnect with that person because I would like to know what they're up to these days. So we were just kind of talking on social media for a little bit. I wanted to have like some type of get together with them, maybe have lunch with them or something, just to see how they've been doing. And like once or twice we agreed, but then they had to cancel the last moment, and they just kept telling me they're going to get back to me, they're going to get back to me, they're going to get back to me. Finally, a few months ago, they messaged me saying like, yeah, let's meet up this week, but I need to borrow like $20 or something. And I was like, okay. But then the next message they said, oh, never mind, which basically tells me that they probably got the money from somebody else and now they don't need me. And it was really at that point I just thought, you know what, no, I'm not going to be taken advantage of by this person again. This just feels like a complete rehash of 10 years ago. This is the kind of situation that I do not need to deal with in terms of my mental health. I mean, I wish that person the best, but again, just the poor communication, the fact that, they took advantage of me once and I just feel like they were going to do it again, it was just time to cut them off. I mean, I know that person has had struggles in the last few years. She has 2 kids with a guy who, according to her, was an abusive guy. I can't confirm or deny that or not because I don't know the guy. I've never met him. I've never spoken to him. I will say that if the stories are true, I hope this guy gets what he has coming to them, but at the same time, it's not my story to tell, so I won't tell it. I mentioned before that when I was younger, at one point my mom had reconnected with this guy that she had gone to school with. He was living in Boston, and my mom was adamant that she was going to marry this guy, and her and I were going to move out to Boston, which I did not want at the time. And my dad was definitely not going to let this happen, and this was a very struggling time for me during my childhood. But the moment where I felt somebody kind of cross the line with me was I had this babysitter when I was younger who, funny enough, the reason she became my babysitter was because her daughter used to work with my dad. And my dad was talking to her saying, we were trying to get a babysitter for Christopher. And she said like, oh, my mom babysits and everything. And that's basically how they entered the picture. But as the years went on, and they became more aware of the struggles between my mom and my dad, they kind of gravitated more towards my mom, to the point that one day I was at my babysitter's daughter's house, and my babysitter actually came and picked me up there and was going to bring me back to her house while we waited for my dad to come pick me up. But that car ride that I had with my babysitter from her daughter's house to her house, it was like the longest car ride of my life. My babysitter was totally for me and my mom going to Boston. She started listing off reasons why she thought it was a good thing, and you can come back home during this time or whatever. I just remember saying like, I don't want to talk about this right now. And she was like, well, you should talk about it. And she just kept going on and on and on about it. And I just did not want to have this conversation at the time. Listen, it's bad enough that here I am, 9 years old. I'm going to have to go home with my dad, and he's going to be on the phone with my mother screaming at her about this. Or I'll go home with my mom and she'll be on the phone screaming at my dad about this. I'm already dealing enough with this as is at home. Technically, you're not part of my family. Technically, you're not going to be the deciding vote on where I'm going to go. I'm a little kid. I'm 9 years old. If I don't want to talk about this, I shouldn't have to talk about this. Am I over that situation now? Of course. Maybe that's not nearly on the level of doing a YouTube video that harasses somebody for your own troubles, but I at least can generate sympathy for those kinds of situations. Now, have I had any other subsequent moments that are on that level? For the most part, no, although there is 2 particular moments in the last 3 years that have stuck with me. First one happened about 2 months later. It was actually the day before my grandmother's birthday, to be exact. 2022 was a very struggling year for me as far as work was concerned, and I came home one night and I was just really tired and burned out, and I was really getting to a point like, I really think I'm just going to start looking for another job. But I got into this heated argument with my mom, and she's like, well, if you quit, they're not going to take you back. And just this whole heated back and forth. Now, truth be told, I told a very vague version of this story when I did my apology video for my Twitter people, but I didn't tell them the actual climax of this story. So if anybody from my Twitter days is watching this, I do apologize that I wasn't fully upfront about this story. So her and I just kept going back and forth, and then finally she just said, suck it up. If you want to come home and kick a hole in the wall, go ahead. I know she didn't mean literally kick a hole in the wall, but I actually turned to her and I said, I can kick a hole in the wall? I literally got up from my seat, walked across the room, and kicked a hole in the wall. Yeah, that was the kick her around the world, because I am not a destructive person like that. That is the first and hopefully to date last time I will ever kick a hole in the wall. I do not go punching holes in walls, kicking, nope, I don't do that shit. She told me to go to my dad's, and I went to my dad's, and then when I got there, we FaceTime, and she's in tears. She's like, Christopher, what did I do? How did I break you? How can we fix you? And I just reassured her. I'm like, Mom, you didn't do anything. I'm just tired and I'm burned out from work. Next day, she picked me up and went up to my grandmother's for her birthday. We didn't tell my grandmother this whole story, but at that point, things were at peace. It was okay again. So that's one moment. The second moment happened earlier last year. It was March, and my grandmother on my dad's side was on her deathbed, basically. She had been battling breast cancer for a number of years up to that point, but she was in hospice, and unfortunately, she had these sores on her body, and because of that, there was these complications that was was preventing the doctors from being able to treat her cancer at the time. And that was ultimately what took her from us. Where does this play in with my mental health? Because there was a member of my family who was the one who was basically taking care of her, and we just felt that he should have brought it to our attention a lot sooner that she had these sores on her body, because if they had gotten treated a lot sooner, maybe she'd still be with us right now. My grandmother wasn't the healthiest person in the world. She was a heavy smoker for the longest time, but when she got cancer, she quit cold turkey. But nonetheless, she wasn't always the healthiest person, so I'm not saying she was going to be here for another 10 years, but at the same time, I think to myself, if this one member of my family had spoken up sooner, maybe situations would be different now. Now, as far as my mental health goes, what I ended up doing in response to that, I can somewhat forgive myself for it now, just because, again, I was in this sort of pre-grieving stage, because like a few days after that was when she passed away. But what I ultimately did was I went home, I went on my TikTok, and I did this like 10-minute TikTok, tearing a new asshole into this member of my family, because I just felt he should have spoken up soon and everything, and this might not be the way it is right now, and I was just so angry. So that is one time I sort of slipped back into the role that I did in that YouTube video a few years ago, although in this case, I'm not ripping on somebody for something that's my fault, I'm ripping on something that's technically their fault. But nonetheless, don't be making videos ripping on people or whatever. It's one thing if you want to rip on yourself, don't rip on people, especially members of your family. So sometime after that, I did end up deleting that TikTok. But those are really the only two incidents that stick with me in the last few years in terms of me being off the mental scale again. Do I still have like my stress spasms when I have to deal with an annoying customer on the phone, or when I'm recording a TikTok and it starts lagging? Trust me, you do not want to be around me when TikTok starts lagging and I'm just trying to do a simple video. Yes, but like as far as like me being off the mental scale like I was when I did that YouTube video 3.5 years ago, no. Me kicking the hole in the wall, me doing this TikTok about a member of my family, yeah, those are the only two that really stick with me. So outside of those two situations, in the last few years, I've just been focusing heavily on being in a much better headspace and just focusing on my healing. Because the big lesson that all of us have to learn with mental health is real. If you want to heal and change from some of the situations you've been through as a result of mental health, you have to commit. Mental health is a commitment. And the day I had to realize it was a commitment was 3.5 years ago. I also had to get deep lessons in entitlement. I was trying to entitle myself to things that I was never entitled to in the first place. A lot of what I was earning in terms of the respect and kindness with the friends I was making online, it was just a really nice, good privilege, but I was abusing that privilege. So I've had to learn that, dude, don't act entitled, because that will turn people away as well. But just the same, even with my healing, I've learned that there is two things that I am entitled to, regardless of what I did. First is healing. Don't ever let anybody tell you you're not entitled to healing. Second, in peace of mind. We're all entitled to peace of mind. We're all entitled to heal ourselves, to cleanse ourselves, to become better people because of our mistakes. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not allowed to heal yourself because of your mistakes. Just to kind of illustrate the kind of points I want to make about mental health, here's something that I saw on Instagram earlier this year. Now, for those of you who follow this channel, I've done several videos about Goosebumps. Now, one of the guys I follow in the Goosebumps community is Goosebumps Ozzy fan. This is actually something he posted in his Instagram story earlier this year, because this was around the time that he was becoming open about the fact that he was dealing with narcissistic behavior on his part, and that he was going to be seeking therapy, and he just wanted to get himself in a better headspace. So Goosebumps Ozzy fan, I praise you for being open about that and also sharing this in your story. I don't think he had this posted for long, but I'm glad he did, because as soon as I read this, I thought, wow, I can relate to this very much. Yes, it's possible to change narcissistic traits or behaviors, but it requires a commitment to self-awareness and genuine openness to change. Therapy can help you identify and understand the triggers that lead to defensive or controlling behaviors. A therapist can also help you uncover underlying issues that may be fueling certain reactions. Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, I don't consider myself a trained psychiatrist or therapist or psychologist or whatever you want to call it, but I've just been lucky enough that I've just been looking within myself at the situations that I've been through enough to get the lessons that I feel that I need to get out of them at the moment. But that is not me by any means trying to undermine the credibility of what psychiatric help can give people. If you feel that's what you need to do to get yourself in the headspace that like I try to be in these days, or beyond that, please do it. Be honest. You must be willing to be honest about your behaviors and commit to changing. That's practically what I'm doing right here. I will never escape the shadow of my past situations if I don't be open about them. You're not going to be living in a positive and cleansed out headspace if you just want to keep hiding your mistakes and running for your mistakes. I want to learn from them. I want to become a better person because of them, but I'm not going to let those situations be the mark I'm going to leave with everybody. We all make mistakes. We have to own up to the mistakes, and we can become better people because of those mistakes. Be patient. Rewiring your brain takes time, so be patient and kind to yourself. Totally agree with that as well. This has been an ongoing thing for me for 3.5 years. Mental health is not something you cure over a weekend. It's ongoing. The big turning point in my life was 3.5 years ago. I'm here 3.5 years later still learning things about myself because of that, as well as other situations. And you have to be patient. You can't put yourself in this headspace where you just want a quick fix. There is no quick fix with mental health. Focus on changing your patterns. The best apology is changed behavior. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I choose to be the person I am these days. Even if people don't necessarily want to look at me as a changed person, at least I know I've taken upon myself to be a changed person, because it's not about achieving admiration or recognition from the other people who saw you at your worst. Because a big lesson I have to learn with myself is, hey, there are going to be people, regardless of what I say, what I do, they will look at me and still see me as the dude who made mistakes. Don't own up to those people. Look at the people who saw you at your worst and now look at you now and they give you the thumbs up. Review your successes. Choose a time period to review your successes and where you need to focus more. That kind of goes back to what I was saying, how it's always going to be ongoing. One of the things I've sort of picked up on this as time has gone on is that there's just more and more layers that I can peel back and learn about myself by just analyzing certain moments in my life. You know, when certain people have seen me at my worst and they've turned their backs on me, I mean, there's just so much I can look at that and be like, okay, where are the lessons to be learned there? It's not a matter of, oh, I did a video harassing somebody. Okay, what motivated that harassment? I had these lingering feelings. There was other things going on in my life that was stressing me out. I have Asperger's syndrome. There's no cure for that. That's just something I gotta deal with on a day-to-day basis. But that should not be any excuse for why I can't keep it under control. And I just was not keeping myself in the headspace that I needed to be at the time. But that goes through other facets of my life. I wasn't in the headspace I should have been in when I was in high school. I wasn't in the headspace I should have been in when I was in college. The headspace I'm in these days is better than those headspaces, but it's still an ongoing headspace. And there's still things that I'm picking up from it as we go along. Because I realized that the previous headspaces I was in was turning me into a toxic person. I was a toxic person. I can be honest about that now. Here's another post I found online. I'm not sure who wrote this. My toxic trait: I don't get over shit, I just get past it. I haven't healed from a lot of things. I've just accepted them for what they are. True. Like I said, healing is an ongoing thing, even to the point that you may not 100% be healed with a lot of those situations. But as time goes on, you accept them. Don't put yourself in this headspace, oh, I'll never get over that, I'll never get over that, I'll never get over that. You will eventually get yourself into a headspace where you can just look at it and be like, hey, it was a life-changing event, but I've gotten the lessons I need out of it and more, because it's ongoing, and you will learn to not let those events define you for who you are today. Maybe you can define yourself by the lessons you've learned from those situations, but don't let the bad moments of your past be the legacy you leave behind for yourself. And the truth of the reality is, there are people who are going to be toxic towards you whether they think they're being toxic towards you or not. I might still run into somebody down the line who's still going to look at me and see me for the mistakes I made. I hate to say this, but that is toxic. Time changes, people changes, the world changes. Sometimes you have to reach that point where you have to look at the way people are these days. Just to read one more thing that I found online. Just remember, we are all toxic. Every single human being is capable of being toxic, has been, currently is, etc. But some people have the desire to be educated on it and do better, while others will ignore any accountability and continue to act the same way. Pay attention. Now, one of the reasons why that post hits me well is because, you know what, it's sort of a double-edged sword in my case. Let's read the first half of this one paragraph. But some people have the desire to be educated on it and do better. That represents me these days. I have made mistakes. I'm owning up to those mistakes. I want to learn from those mistakes. I want to become a better person because of those mistakes. While others will ignore any accountability and continue to act the same way. That was me 3-4 years ago. That was the person who made that video that harassed my friend. It didn't matter that that person and I weren't friends anymore. It didn't matter. This person was my friend at one point. You don't do an hour-long video harassing your friends, especially if it's a woman. And that big lesson I had to learn that day is you don't harass a woman. Harassing a woman on camera, that's the kiss of death. You do not do that. But I like the idea that we're all toxic to some degree. I'm toxic. People in my family have been toxic. Friends I've had have been toxic. But the thing that I think we all need to learn is you could be toxic and not necessarily be a bad person. I'm not saying you're a bad person by being a toxic person. Sometimes toxic behavior is born out of situations that we feel we are doing for ourselves, that it's for our better nature. I could look at somebody and call them toxic because they don't want to talk to me because of mistakes I've made and they just want to hold me to those mistakes till the end of my days. Nonetheless, I can't really criticize them for that, because if that's something they feel they have to do for their own best nature, so be it. I've been the same way too. I've run into people from time to time who I don't want to talk to because of certain situations they've been in, but at the same time I also have to admit that's not exactly growth. If I want to grow, I need to start looking at people for who they are these days. Have these people learn from their mistakes? Have I learned from my mistakes? Growth isn't just about what you see in other people, it's also what you see in yourself as well. And it's just peeling back those layers that are going to give you the life lessons you need to be the person you need to be these days. And always keep it in your control. Do not let others control the person that you're going to be. I'll read another thing. Never give anybody enough power over you to bring back the triggered, unhealed version of you when you've worked so hard to become better than that. Exactly. If I want to heal myself and become a better person, I have to be the one who's in control of myself. And I'm not going to change myself to bypass people's negative perceptions of me. I've made mistakes. I've lived up to those mistakes. Let me be who I want to be these days. I didn't choose to change because I wanted people to see me as a better person. I changed because I didn't want to be that person anymore. I wasn't a bad guy who was living under a false persona of a nice guy. If anything, I became a false persona. The person who did that video 3.5 years ago, that was a false persona. That is not me. The version of myself that people, whether it's from people from high school or work or my Twitter crowd who have forced themselves to turn their backs on me, they turn their backs on a fake persona. Another lesson I've been trying to grab onto is the idea that you can't always blame yourself for everything. You're gonna have people who come and go in your life whether you like it or not. And many times it will be through no fault of your own. You're gonna have people who won't like you 2 seconds after they meet you. My former stepdad, I didn't really like him the first time I met him. And that was before I eventually discovered what a jerk he was. It just happens. And there are just certain situations where you don't always have to own up to it. Own up to the ones that you have to own up to. Case in point, a few years ago, one of my coworkers, one who I'm not that close with, but I would speak to them occasionally. But for a time, I was Facebook friends with that person. And about 2 years ago, they blocked me. And then about 3 days later, out of the blue, they friended me on Facebook, which basically tells me that they unblocked me. So I accepted the request, but then a few hours later, apparently they unfriended me again. That's weird shit. I don't feel like I have to explain myself for that. Same thing with this person who followed me on TikTok last year. It was somebody who I actually knew since my elementary school days, who I was for the most part casual with. I mean, I wasn't close friends with them, but I'd been following them on TikTok for a little bit, and then out of the blue, they followed me back last year. But then like literally 2 days later, they blocked me. What did I do in the span of 2 days that made this person block me? You tell me. The shit that I did on TikTok a year ago is the same shit I do now on TikTok. So that's what I'm saying. You don't have to explain yourself to every little person you've met throughout every facet of your life. But that's always been a situation with me over the years. I just apologize for everything, even if it's not necessarily something I have to apologize for. I remember my stepmom used to get annoyed by that. She'd be like, Christopher, stop apologizing. Sorry. Own up to the ones that you're close with and actually appreciate you and respect you and love you and they want nothing but the best for you. Don't own up to the people who decide after 2 seconds it's just not worth having you around. You were a mutual at best. You were a casualty at best. Those are not the people you want in your life. Stop being paranoid. Stop thinking that, oh my god, this person doesn't like me because of that or that or that. It's all connected somehow. You can't be in a clean mental space if that's the way you approach certain situations and people. It kind of reminds me when I started high school. When I started high school, I was very defensive to pretty much everybody because I just come from middle school where people were bullying me. I think I just put myself in this headspace that every person who's like my age at that time is like that. But I quickly learned when I went to high school, no, not everybody is like that. You know what? I should have given some of these people a chance at first when I wasn't. I was just so defensive because I'm expecting the same treatment in high school that I was getting in middle school. Fortunately, that didn't last all 4 years of high school. Yes, I had my defensive moments, but not to the point where like I'm defensive towards literally everybody like I was at the start of high school. And listen, as much as I could say that I was bullied at certain points in my life, I also have to come clean about the fact that I've been a bully as well. The fact that I did that video a few years ago, that's a classic case of bullying. I've gotten defensive towards people I've interacted online. I was defensive towards people in high school. I've been defensive towards people I've worked with. I don't want to be a bully to anybody. I want to be a nice, kind person to people, maybe be a good influence, but I don't want to be this domineering and stubborn kind of guy. I am stubborn, but you know what? I'm trying to get a better grasp on that as well, because I'm also a believer in being too stubborn is going to push people away and they're not going to have any respect for you. I saw this one post on Facebook some time ago and it said, it is your responsibility to control your triggers. It's not others' responsibility to tiptoe around you. 100% true. And that applies both ways. It's not people's responsibility to tiptoe around me. It's not my responsibility to tiptoe around them. When it's your mental health, it's your responsibility. When you're not controlling your mental health, you're going to feel very isolated. So those ideas have really sort of become my mantra, if you will, in the last few years. And it's always ongoing. I mean, listen, there's things I can own up about now that I wouldn't have been able to say a year or two ago. I'm at the point now where I can say that the person I harassed a few years ago, I had some lingering feelings with, but even when I did my apology video, I was still kind of downplaying that. And that's been one of the better aspects to this, because I actually like the idea that I can continue to pull back these layers and see more of myself. I'm the only person I have to live with every day for the rest of my life until I'm not here anymore. If I can't trust and tolerate myself, who can I trust and tolerate? And it's hard. Every day that I think about some of these situations is another day where I have to remind myself I haven't fully forgiven myself. I remember when I did my apology video, I had the actual nerve to say that my friend betrayed me. Betrayed me in what way? Because they set boundaries? Because they said certain things needed to come to an end for the sake of their own mental health and their own state of mind? That's not betrayal, bro. Doesn't matter what you wanted out of the friendship. That's something they're doing for their own best interest. You have to respect that. Bro, you didn't have a clue what betrayal was. The day I posted that video, that was the day I learned what betrayal was. I not only betrayed my friend and the people who appreciated and liked me in that community, I betrayed myself that day. I learned that it is possible to betray yourself. I learned that it is possible to traumatize yourself. Oh yes, a big lesson I've learned in trauma is that it's not just something that's inflicted to you by other people or other situations. It could very much be your own situation that is going to cause you some type of psychological trauma. And that has definitely happened with me. I am still dealing with emotional trauma as a result of situations that were of my own making. And that all plays into how I said, you know, I don't know if I ever will fully forgive myself, because who knew that I could traumatize myself that much? Will there come a point in my life where I won't think about it as much? I'm sure. But the impact of it will never leave me. But at the same time, again, I don't really want wanted to leave me, because a lot of what I can say now, I wouldn't have been able to say or think 3-4 years ago. And don't think that I haven't had situations where I'm not able to see it from the other side. Just recently, one of my friends from TikTok made a YouTube channel, but I was talking with this person, and it turns out that the reason they made this channel was they were basically manipulated into making that channel. They had this friend on social media who was just a total manipulator and everything, and basically pushed for them to make that channel. And on top of that, they really only wanted my friend to post these like specific videos, I guess, to get this one other person's attention. And my friend was very upset by that, and they eventually blocked this person. When they were telling me that story, you know who I was seeing in my eyes in that situation? The friend I betrayed 3-4 years ago when I did that YouTube video. My TikTok friend is my friend from a few years ago. The person who manipulated my TikTok friend was me 3-4 years ago. I was completely looking at the same situation from an outside perspective, and it almost choked me up. And I still have moments like that every time it's the anniversary of when I posted that video, because bear in mind, it was 2 days before my birthday. The first year anniversary was not fun because we went up to New York for my birthday, and that was a disastrous birthday. That's another story for another time. But on top of that, the whole day I was just in this sad mood. Not that anybody knew, but I was in a sad mood because I thought, wow, it's been 1 year since I did that video. It's been 1 year since everybody cut me off. Last year, I don't really remember so much. I mean, I know I did a TikTok about it because it appeared in my TikTok memories this year. This year, however, the 3rd year anniversary actually hit me really hard because the actual morning of, I was laying in bed, I took out my phone, I went on this Discord for this other YouTuber I follow, and the first thing I see in the Discord is a link to a new video from the channel that I used to follow as part of that community. And I just thought, really? I wasn't even a half hour into my day. I wasn't even out of bed yet, and I already felt like I was gonna burst into tears. I felt like that was the powers of be saying like, yeah, don't think that we weren't gonna let you forget what day it was. And that was just a few months ago. So I'm always going to have these lingering emotions in regards to that situation from a few years ago. I'm not looking for those people to forgive me. I mean, you forgive me or forgive me, you don't, you don't. You can't force forgiveness. I said this in my apology video. You can forgive without respecting, but you can't respect without forgiving. And as I mentioned before, there's just several factors at this point for why I just know that those people are never going to talk to me again. That being said, if I had been granted one final opportunity to, at the bare minimum, talk to my one YouTuber friend one last time, I would definitely be for that at some point. I'm not saying it would necessarily be now. I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for that just now, but somewhere down the line, yeah, I don't want the last time we talked to be them screaming at me for shit that was my own fault. If we talked again, we wouldn't be fighting. There's nothing to fight about at this point. I was the perpetrator. I can admit that now. I would like to apologize to them directly, not just in a pre-recorded video, about how sorry I am for everything I did and whatever emotional stress, whatever trauma they went through because of things I did. Not because I want them to forgive me, but because I just feel like I still owe that to them. They not only saw me at my mentally worst, they became the biggest victim of me at my mentally worst. That's something I don't think I will ever fully let go of, and I would love that chance to apologize to them directly. I would like to do that with a few people, but only one person did I ever do a hour-long video harassing them for shit that was my own fault. Yeah, I feel a certain obligation to that one person. Even if that conversation was to theoretically happen, I would want it to happen in a way where it benefits both parties. I'm not trying to benefit myself anymore. I don't want to have theoretical conversations with people who I know don't want to talk to me anymore unless they feel they can get something out of it themselves. Even if they just want to tell me I'm a piece of shit. I mean, first of all, they're entitled to tell me that, but even still, that's another layer I can peel back, and maybe I'll learn another thing about myself that I need to work on. Now, I, of course, have accepted that this theoretical discussion between us would never happen. If they didn't talk to me again after I did that apology video, I can't imagine them wanting to talk to me again in any other situation. And I have to respect that, and I do. I stick with the boundaries. I'm not reaching out to that person anymore or anybody from that community anymore. But yes, in theory, of course, I would like to have one last final conversation with my ex-YouTuber friend. Because at the same time, as much as I'm always going to regret what I did to them, and as much as I wish I feel I could try to give back for everything that I did, if I hadn't done what I did, I couldn't do this video right now. I wouldn't be conscious of my mental health if I didn't do what I did. I wouldn't have a better appreciation for boundaries if my friend had not set boundaries. That person really helped me put myself in the headspace that I needed to put myself in. In a cosmic way, that person saved my life. I know they will never listen to another word I have to say or care, but I would like to at least have that opportunity to tell them directly, thank you for saving my life. Because at the end of the day, I don't really want to take this situation to my grave. If I have to, I have to. That's karma on me for everything I did. That's not my friend's responsibility. And I know that my friend will never, under any circumstances, forgive me. But if I had to settle for something that is less than their forgiveness, it's just the confirmation that they at least believe what I'm saying at this point. In my current headspace, I could totally settle for, listen, I respect that you've owned up to your mistakes, you're learning from your mistakes, you're becoming a better person because of your mistakes, but nonetheless, I can never under any situation bring myself to forgive you. Fair enough. 3-4 years ago, I would not have been able to settle for that. I was in such a bad headspace that it wouldn't have happened, but nowadays, I could totally settle for that. But it is what it is. But what do I know? Charlie Kirk's wife apparently apparently forgives the guy who killed her husband, which in turn apparently led Tim Allen to being able to forgive the guy who killed his father several years ago. And he even said that if his father hadn't died, he wouldn't be where he is right now. And that's exactly where I've been. If I hadn't done that bullshit YouTube video, even if it was for completely the wrong reasons, at least in retrospect, I can at least say, hey, the life lessons that I wasn't grasping at the time, I now have because I did what I did. You know what you know now, and that's enough. You're never too old to learn things about yourself and to learn the big difference between right and wrong. Even if we have to learn those lessons in the most unorthodox ways. It also goes back to what I said earlier. My friend has their own mental health to deal with. If interacting with me, even if it's one last time, is going to conflict with their own mental health, I have to respect why they would never want to pursue that anyway. You don't pet the dog that bit you, especially if the dog bit you several times, and unfortunately I'm guilty of that. Anyways, just a few more things before I start wrapping this up. There is one area of the video that I did a few years ago where I harassed my friend that I didn't actually touch upon in my apology video. Not because I didn't necessarily want to, or it just didn't occur to me at the time. It was just, it's a very delicate subject, and because I knew I was trying to be cautious with the things I was saying up to that point, that I just felt it was probably best to not touch upon it, but I'll finally touch upon it now. In the video where I harassed my friend, I called them a liar. Part of the decline of our friendship was because of lines that I had crossed within the friendship. And when I called them out in the video that effectively ended my time within that community as well as Twitter, I said, well, this person accuses me of crossing lines when you know they've lied to me for 2 years about this and this and this and this. But now that time has passed and I've looked back on it further, if anyone was ever to ask me, well, does that also mean that you are now convinced that your friend did not lie to you? So here's where this part of the video is going to get a little touchy. The truth of the matter is my friend did lie to me. And before anybody wants to think I'm taking a step backwards here and want to come at me with pitchforks, hear me out. I have a different reason for saying that this time. The reason I brought up that point 3.5 years ago was as a pathetic attempt to defend myself for things that I did. The reason I'm bringing it up this time is as a form of defense on their part. My friend didn't have a choice at that time but to lie to me. And I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, there's never a choice to lie. Friends don't lie. If that person was your real friend, they wouldn't have lied to you. If you understood where I was with myself mentally at the time, you would have lied to me too. I was so far gone. I was such a clingy friend. I was such high maintenance at the time. I was an insufferable friend, a disrespectful friend, a dishonest friend. We've all been guilty of being dishonest and lying at some point in our lives. Being dishonest is as much a part of life as being honest is. In fact, you really can't learn the true value of honesty unless you've been dishonest. And if anything else, that's also another reason why I've tried to make being honest a major priority to myself these days. Being honest was a priority before, don't get me wrong, but when I was in these bad mental states, I could definitely look back now, even though I was convincing myself I was being fully upfront and honest, no, I was actually very much bending the rules at the time. Which brings up other points, like for instance, when I was making my apology video, I knew that regardless of what I said in that video, there's always going to be that high chance that nobody believes what I say or even cares. But that should not stop you from being honest about everything. In those kinds of situations, it can go one of two ways. I could either tell the truth and they'll just call me out on bullshit because they don't believe me, or number two, I could just lie and they'll see through the lies, and either way I have to admit to myself that I was bullshitting. I would rather tell the truth and nobody believes me, so that way when my time comes, at least myself and the powers that be know I was telling the truth. It sucks when people don't believe you when you're telling the truth, but at the same time, when you have to bullshit your way through life, eventually that's all going to settle in and you have to admit to yourself that you're a bullshitter. In my opinion, that's a much worse feeling. So yes, my friend did lie to me, but they didn't have a choice. I would have been lying to me too if I was in their shoes. That's actually another thing I wish I could apologize to them for. Not only that they lied to me, but that I actually put them in a position to have to lie to me. That's another thing I don't think I'll ever fully forgive myself for. Listen, we're all going to meet people in our lives who just lie to our faces. But when it's like people in your family or people you consider close friends, to have to put people like that in positions to have to lie to you, that's a very difficult pill to swallow. And that is another thing on the long list of things I wish I could make up to that person. And to a lesser extent myself. Because if I put them in that position, that's a betrayal to myself as well, because that's not the person I was trying to establish myself as. But whatever. For me, that's always going to be an ongoing situation in terms of my mental healing. Even though I miss talking to the friends I had on Twitter, I honestly don't think that these days I would have a Twitter anymore. I just feel like Twitter has been getting a bad rep in the last few years. I mean, not that I've been on it, but just like from what I see about it in the media, it doesn't seem like the kind of place I would want to be these days. But I mean, I could give you a long list of situations in regards to what I feel will benefit my mental health and what doesn't benefit my mental health. And if you're going to ask me, like, what are other areas where I feel I've seen definite improvement? Well, let me give you an example. I lost 2 of my cousins within 5 years. One died back in 2020. The other one died at the beginning of this year. I even did a video on my channel in regards to his death. Both were young. The one who died in 2020 was 28. The one who died this year was 35. What also makes it more tragic, my aunt, their mother, died over 20 years ago at roughly the same age that the cousin who died this year was. But where does this play in with my mental health? When my cousin died back in 2020, I was in such a different place mentally at the time that I don't think I was grieving their death in an honest way, if that makes sense. Like, I went to the funeral, I was feeling the emotions, but like it wasn't really sinking in with me at the time. Whereas the cousin who died this year, that one actually hit me. Not because like I was closer with him than the cousin who died a few years ago, but I think because these days I'm in such a different headspace than I was 5 years ago, that when my cousin died this year, that actually kind of caught me off guard. And when he died, the thing that was actually hitting me more about it is my uncle, in the span of 23 years, lost his wife and 2 out of 3 of his kids. And the third child, my youngest cousin, she lost both her siblings and her mother. I remember the day before my cousin's funeral this year, I went right up the road here, because right at the bend down the road here, across the street, is the house that they lived in when I was younger. I recorded a video of that house on my TikTok, and as I was walking back, I just did a whole spiel about how I was just thinking about 3 out of the 5 of that family is gone. And the 3 who died young. That's just tragic. It's just like, talk about a broken family. And I've had other people in my family who died in the last few years. I mentioned my one grandmother dying last year. One of my grandfathers died about 2-3 years ago. And I've processed those deaths in different ways. I guess in a way you could say I have a sort of easy way of processing death. Not necessarily easy, but it doesn't take me long to just accept, hey, it is what it is. When someone dies, you can't do anything about it. They're gone. Especially if it was situations that was beyond anyone's control anyway. I think that's why like the situation I put myself in 3.5 years ago is still very relevant with me now, because I know that there was things about that I could have changed. But because I have to accept the situations for as they are, at this point it's just like, it is what it is. I'm getting the life lessons out of it that I need, and I'm grateful for that, even though there's so much of it I wish I could still change. And this is not like some desperate ploy for me to like reconnect with people. Listen, this is a situation that goes beyond people just forgiving me. And I'm in a different mindset these days now, where it's just, I don't know if I would want to be engaged in that anyway. Which more or less brings me up to the present. What am I mostly doing with myself these days? Trying to keep my feet on the ground, trying to assess what I want to really do with myself. I don't want to stay with my job forever. What career do I want? I don't really know. I could give this YouTube thing a try. I would like to get involved with doing short film projects again. In fact, when I went to the re-release of Jaws the other month ago, the dude who was working at the concession stand is one of my friends from college. He's been at that theater for a long time. But he and I were in a film club back in college. He and this other dude that we went to college with, we were doing like these little short projects a few years ago that kind of got put on hold, partly because of the pandemic, partly because of other things. I said to him, like, yeah, it's so sad that like our film group kind of dissolved and everything. I mean, I definitely don't think the pandemic helped, and he said yes, it definitely did not help. But we also agreed, like, hey, maybe we'll try to reignite this somehow, get the guys back together, maybe we'll do some film projects again, who knows. I am actually in a place in my life where I am not necessarily excited, but at least optimistic for what my future has to hold. As I said earlier, every day I wake up is a reminder that my story's not over. There's going to be more events that are going to take place in my life, both good and bad. I couldn't be where I am if I didn't have a past, but I shouldn't let the troubles of yesterday make me apprehensive about the events of tomorrow. And at the same time, I'm just constantly focusing on myself, just trying to keep a clear head, try to stay positive, just be honest with myself. If I make mistakes along the way, I hope to learn from them, and hopefully it'll shape me into a better person. Who knows? I'm not really pursuing any relationships right now. I'm more focused on me. I mean, that's actually a big change with me these days. There was a time where I would be like desperate for like a relationship, even though I could look back and be like, you were nowhere near the mental state of mind to be in a relationship with anybody. These days, I'm definitely in a state of mind where if I'm going to be in a relationship, I want to be in a clear head. I want to mature myself. I mean, listen, is anybody really mature? I mean, I think we've all been immature at various points in our lives. And there's something else I want to add to that too. One thing that I have learned that I don't have to be sorry for is being a socially awkward person. I practically embrace the fact that I am a socially awkward person. I just found it best for myself to develop my own interests, even if I'm the only person I can really share it with. Because at the end of the day, you can take any little thing in the world, regardless of how big or small it is or how meaningful or meaningless it is, someone in the world will find that interesting. I have a lot of interest that I know is not going to gain a lot of interest from a lot of people, but I don't care. I am who I am. Does it come off socially awkward at times? Yes, it does. And when I have these weird situations that are born out of my social awkwardness, I will apologize for that. But for being at heart a socially awkward person, I don't have to apologize for that. But I don't want things like that to complicate a relationship, which is why I'm definitely waiting until I feel now is the time where I can commit and be the best partner I can be in a relationship. Like, this is the first time in years where like I don't have like a quote unquote crush right now. And I want to become a less apologetic person. I mean, listen, there's times to apologize, there's times to not apologize, but don't feel like you have this constant need to apologize for everything. I'm at the point now where I just say I'm sorry once, and then I just walk and I just say it's out of your hands at that point. If apology 1 didn't do anything, then apology 6, 7, 8, and 9 are probably not going to do anything either. And as I said, I consider my journey a survival story. All the decisions I'm making these days in terms of my mental health is really about survival. When you're not keeping your mental health in check, your chances of survival in the real world are not going to be good. And when I have to constantly keep asking myself, what do I really want to do with my place in the world? I think the real thing that I want to do is just survive.